I wanted to thank in particular Code REDD, because I think Code REDD is perhaps one of the most advanced and innovative agglomerations of the efforts to really drive forward the idea of REDD. A lot of us have been working on REDD at the very individual level. Jeremy, you just gave us a really good understanding of what the real technical and detailed efforts that are happening on the ground. But we need someone to really take that message forward and really communicate with the folks who really could make a difference in terms of promoting REDD projects and providing the underlying financing that are going to help these projects move forward. And that, of course, is the folks who can actually make commitments to purchasing and retiring the offsets generated by REDD projects. So I wanted to make a note of that for Code REDD in particular. If we think back about where forests stand in the grand debate, it's interesting because despite the fact that there's a very clear understanding of the role of forests and what they can play in terms of climate change, they're either obviously a clear contributor to the problem, or at the same time they can provide a really important solution. And this has generated a very vigorous debate out there in terms of how we actually can harness forests to help solve the underlying problem that we face in terms of climate change. And at the VCS, we've been very fortunate to have grown up in the middle of this debate, and in many ways to have grown up because of it, because it's really been one of the key elements of our work has been related to the underlying development of rules, procedures, and requirements that go to provide the certainty and the ability of private investors and nonprofits to invest in these projects, invest in these activities, and provide the resources to the communities that allow them to protect the forests in the end of the day. The VCS is a nonprofit organization. We were established by some of the leading organizations who felt that there was a real need in the market to deliver a comprehensive and coherent greenhouse gas program that allowed and that gave certainty to folks who were wanting to invest in these kinds of projects and gave credibility to the underlying asset that they were generating. The VCS is managed, the VCS program is managed by the VCS Association. That's the organization that I work for. We're headquartered in Washington, D.C. We have an office in Chile and representatives in Brazil, China, and Thailand. We're trying to establish a global network of support to make sure that the folks who are actually working with the VCS and the requirements and procedures that we have a local access for people to be able to understand and operate and work within the system that we've created. We have a single focus. Our goal is to manage the VCS program and make sure that it's as robust and credible and practical as possible. And we're funded through the VCU levy. So every time anybody issues a VCU, a verified carbon unit, it's the unit that we issue, there's a 10-cent fee that we collect, and that's how we keep the lights on. I think to a large extent the VCS has played a very critical role in bringing in the agriculture and forestry and other land use sectors into the carbon market. And this really kind of functioned as one you would expect a steering committee to operate. The VCS was established through a large steering committee, but we've kept a standing steering committee in the agriculture and forestry and other land use space to continue to bring in new ideas and new mechanisms that we can incorporate into the workings of the standard to make sure that we're allowing and encouraging investment in these kinds of projects. And I think that with our innovations in respect of how we guarantee permanence of the reductions and how we address leakage, these are some of the issues that Jeremy mentioned. We've been able to help bring these credits into the carbon market. And we were fortunate enough to be the first standard that actually registered a project and issued credits, REDD credits, for a project that's designed to protect and protect the forests and reduce deforestation. We're also been fortunate in that we are one of the leading standards in the market. A majority of the projects in the voluntary space, actually even including in the compliance space, working under the CDM, are using the VCS as their platform to register their projects and issue their credits. So what does this all mean? And what are we talking about? I have one slide here that really is going to be the basis of most of my presentation and is really the main focus of what we do. And we think of what we do as really a four-pillared system. So at the very center is the VCS standard. That is a document that sets out what are the main requirements for what a VCU, what a verified carbon unit, really is. It talks about the fact that a project has to be additional, meaning it has to be above and beyond business as usual. It talks about the fact that credits have to be audited or validated and verified by a third-party auditor that's accredited under a proper and appropriate system. It talks about the fact that the credits have to be real. So you can't just plant a tree and say, hey, I'm going to sell you the credits from this project 20 years from now. We will only issue credits to demonstrated activities that have already taken place and for carbon that has already been sequestered or the emissions have been prevented from going to the atmosphere. So that's a very, very important element that was one of the key items that came out of that has come out of the discussions within the carbon market. And finally, we talk about the fact that credits have to be permanent. And this is the risk that in this sector in particular, we face the risk, and we need to recognize this, that credits could go, or the carbon that is stored in the trees or on the land could go to the atmosphere if there's a fire, if a project gets cut down, or if there's a number of different interventions that could go to undermine the carbon that is sequestered. So we have clear rules and requirements for how we guarantee that the credits that are issued to a particular project are permanent. We do this by requiring that a certain percentage of the reductions that are achieved by a project are set aside into a buffer account that it serves as an insurance pool, if you will, so that when there is, or if there ever is, a reversal of those credits, we can take the credits or the reductions that are sitting in the buffer account and we can back those out. So that's been one of the key innovations that we've been able to provide to the carbon market to make sure that these credits can operate and be fungible and be equivalent to any other kind of project that reduces greenhouse gas emissions. So that's the center of this diagram, the VCS standard, what the basic requirements are for what the projects have to have, and the credits that are issued, what characteristics they need to meet. On the left-hand side, independent auditing, Jeremy mentioned this, I've mentioned this already. Clearly a very important part of this is that we need to have outside auditors, because it's not good enough for someone to say, hey, I've got these credits, can you buy them from me, or can you issue them? We need to have independent auditing entities who come in and actually look at the project, audit it, and they of course have to meet certain requirements. They have to have conflict of interest procedures, they have to have proper training for their staff, and they have to meet a number of different requirements in order to work under our system. This is clearly a very important part of what we do, is make sure that the auditors working under the system are accredited and know what they're doing and follow due process and procedures. At the top are the methodologies. So we've talked a lot about at the high level, what does this mean, auditing, et cetera. But when the rubber hits the road, and you've got, Molly had a good description how you have different kinds of deforestation. You may have frontier deforestation, which is agricultural development that's moving ahead and basically destroying huge swaths of land. Or you may have mosaic deforestation, which is small patches of agricultural development happening throughout the ecosystem. So how do you think about that and really create an analytical framework, if you will, that allows you to credit the activity that's going to stop that deforestation? That's the methodology. And so all greenhouse gas programs like the VCS need to have clear rules and procedures for how methodologies are developed. And we have a particularly unique system that allows folks to bring together and put forth methodologies that are assessed and evaluated following our requirements, and at the end of the day, give you a methodology and an accounting framework that is robust and gives you credibility for the credits in the end of the day. And ultimately what that does is really allow you to make the case that your project is going beyond business as usual, and it also allows you to account for the reductions that you achieve. And then on the far right-hand side is a very critical part of the system as well, which is, once you've got all this stuff and you've got the credits or you've got the project, how can you tell the world that you've actually achieved all this? So we need to have a very clear and transparent registry system that anybody can go to on the web and look at the underlying documentation. They can look at the auditing reports. They can look at the number of credits that are issued. They can look at the number of reductions that were achieved. They can figure out how many credits from that particular project go into the buffer account. That's what we mean by having a transparent registry system, so you can really look behind, and there can be public accountability and transparency behind all of the credits that are generated under the system, and obviously all the projects that are registered under the VCS. So to give you an idea of what it looks like, this is a screenshot from our project database that basically lays out some details of some of the projects that I just popped up here. And you can see in this part over here, here's where you can click on and look at any one of the projects and download all of the information that's related to that project. And this screenshot right here shows all of the key elements of the project. And in the red, in the red highlighted part back there allows us to register projects or to indicate whether projects meet additional other requirements. And here you can see that these projects have met the CCBS, the Climate, Community, and Biodiversity Standards. And this is one way that projects can actually demonstrate that not only are they generating carbon benefits, which is what you get by issuing a verified carbon unit or a VCU, but in addition to that, you're generating sustainable communities, improved biodiversity, and other benefits by tagging your VCU with these other standards. So it's a very unique and interesting and flexible way to allow project developers to demonstrate those benefits going forward. So thinking about REDD and what it means to the world at large, and to me as a person, I've always thought that REDD is one of those kinds of projects that resonate with people. We've been speaking for many, many years about how are we going to actually stop deforestation. And back from when I was in grad school, we've always known that deforestation has been happening at a tremendously high, alarming rates. But we've had some successes, and yet we've not had the successes that we really need to get on top of the problem. So I've always thought that REDD is one of those key elements and drivers that's going to help us turn the corner and really affect change and protect these forests. And I think that to date, what we see now is that REDD reflects the pioneering work of a number of organizations, whether it's private sector individuals or nonprofits out there protecting forests, developing their projects, figuring out the financing and how those streams of financing can work to protect the forests. And of course, it relates to the private entities who have the opportunity to buy and retire those credits to help finance those underlying activities. I think it's also important to recognize that REDD really represents a new perspective, a new paradigm, if you will, on how we actually provide funding to stop deforestation. And it's really, here, Jeremy mentioned it, performance-based frameworks. I call it the results-based financing frameworks. We're really moving into the world where we are now able to account for the achievements we make based on the investments we do. And this is really quite a powerful concept that I think is really going to help drive, and really one of the large contributions from the carbon markets in terms of being able to demonstrate that once you get and you invest in an activity and you generate the results and you can quantify them, that becomes a very powerful tool for how you actually keep projects accountable, which is really important, but also how you allow private corporates and others involved in the sector to contribute to that effort in a way that gives them security that they're actually getting something for that investment dollar. And obviously, REDD has the potential to transform the international debate. I think it's the concept. If we can prove that the concept works, it will be the source of tremendous insight and innovation that will happen, that I think will galvanize action and potentially even larger agreements at the global scale. This is obviously something that was born out of the United Nations framework. And we hope that the work that we do is going to help to contribute to provide a model that can be used to scale up all that work that's happening at that level, and obviously happening from the grassroots up, as we're seeing from projects like that have been described here already. And in the end of the day, this really helps protect forests and provide livelihoods for forest-dwelling folks. And this is really one of the key drivers and innovators that we think is really going to help move the market forward. And as an individual, I certainly get very excited about the work that a lot of individuals and corporates and nonprofits and organizations are doing under the framework of REDD, because it's really helping to move the dial and change how we think about forests and how we can actually protect them. Thank you very much.